Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, today we are plunging into, well, the rainforests of the sea. Coral reefs, these places, they're just incredibly vibrant, these underwater cities. But they're not just beautiful, right? They are so crucial for life on our planet. We've gathered quite a stack of sources, scientific reports, conservation analyses, the whole lot. And our mission, really, in this deep dive is to unpack why these vital ecosystems matter so much, what's actually happening to them, and what urgent actions are needed.
Exactly. We really want to give you a clear picture of their immense value, but also the accelerating threats they're facing, and crucially, the path forward for their survival. It's a story of extraordinary beauty, yeah, but also one of real urgency.
That sounds like a powerful mission. Okay, so to really get the stakes, I think we need to start small, right? At the very heart of it all, with this tiny, tiny animal.
Yeah, absolutely. At the core, you have the coral polyp. It's minuscule, and it forms this foundational symbiosis, this really vital, close partnership with microscopic algae. They're called zooxanthellae. These algae, they're basically the corals live in solar panels. They provide like up to 90% of its energy. And its color, too.
Right. And that partnership, it powers these incredible structures, but it's also, like you said, incredibly vulnerable. This is where it gets super interesting, I think. This energy source, it comes at a cost. It's often called a Faustian bargain.
Yeah.
Because it makes the corals just exquisitely sensitive.
Yeah.
Almost fatally sensitive, even to tiny environmental changes. It's like this miniature underwater city run on its own solar power. You just have to marvel at that.
And what's fascinating is how long these things take to build. These complex structures, think the Great Barrier Reef or some remote Pacific atoll. They don't just appear. They're built over millennia. We're talking 10,000 years, maybe even up to 30 million years in some cases. But then a severe marine heat wave, it can kill huge areas of these ancient structures in just weeks. That mismatch in time frames is just, it's heartbreaking.
So why should you listening care about these slow-growing wonders?
Yeah.
Well, get this. These ecosystems, they cover less than 1% of the whole ocean floor. Less than 1%. Yet they support an estimated 25% of all marine species. A quarter. That biodiversity is just packed in there. It's staggering.
And it's not just about biodiversity counts. It translates into, massive tangible value. Coral reefs, they're a multi-trillion-dollar natural asset globally. They give vital coastal protection to nearly 200 million people. They prevent something like $94 billion in flood damages every single year. And for maybe up to 1 billion people worldwide, reef fisheries are their main source of protein. Food security hinges on them.
Okay, so given this huge value and this fragility we've talked about, the big question has to be, what's the future looking like for these underwater cities?
Well, unfortunately, that future is it's under a relentless attack from two main global threats, really. First, mass coral bleaching. That's a direct result of rising ocean temperatures. The heat stresses the corals, and they expel those vital algae we mentioned. And then compounding that, you have ocean acidification. You could almost call it the osteoporosis of the sea. As the oceans soak up more CO2, the water gets more acidic. And that acidity directly makes it harder for corals to build their skeletons. It even dissolves them. Models are suggesting maybe a 20% weaker skeleton by the end of the century.
Wow. And these huge global pressures, they're made even worse by local problems, right? Things happening closer to the reefs themselves, like land-based pollution, nutrient runoff from farms causing algal blooms that can just smother the coral. And then there's destructive fishing. Things like blast fishing, which literally pulverizes reefs.
Yeah.
It's awful. Even plastic pollution, which seems to get everywhere, is a factor. Apparently, it can increase the risk of coral disease by something like 89%.
Which naturally raises the question, where are we now? What's the current state? And the data, frankly, is alarming. The world lost about 14% of its coral cover just between 2009 and 2018. And more recently, a November 2024 assessment, it found that 44% of all the species that build reefs are now considered at risk of extinction, almost half.
And the projections for the future, they paint an even bleaker picture, don't they? The IPCC reports are pretty stark. They warn that if global warming hits 1.5 degrees Celsius, we lose 70 to 90% of reefs. But if we reach 2 degrees Celsius warming, we're looking at over 99% loss, which is, it's functional extinction. They might technically exist in tiny pockets, but they won't be performing their vital roles anymore. That half a degree difference is just catastrophic.
Right. So if we connect all these dots, the survival of any functional reef system really hangs on a two-pronged strategy, and it needs to be implemented with, frankly, unprecedented urgency, like this decade.
Okay, so solutions. The first most fundamental step, it sounds like, have to be tackling the root cause. The big one. Radical cuts in global greenhouse gas emissions.
Absolutely. That's paramount. Non-negotiable, really. But second, we also need massive investment in local actions right now. This means things like expanding marine protected areas, MPAs. They've been shown to help reefs recover about 20% faster. And we need to scale up active restoration. Techniques like microfragmentation, it sounds technical, but it's basically growing tiny coral pieces in nurseries and replanting them. That can speed up coral growth by up to 50 times in some cases, boost recovery fast. And then there's the frontier science, like assisted evolution, trying to essentially help corals adapt faster, become more heat tolerant, boosting their natural resilience.
So this deep dive, it really shows the system at a critical point. Facing huge threats, yes, but also, well, there are innovative solutions emerging. Science and conservation are racing against time.
But the window for that action to be effective, it is closing very, very rapidly. The choices we collectively make pretty much now in this decade, they will determine the fate of these incredibly valuable natural assets for generations.
So here's a final thought for you to maybe explore on your own. We've talked about this immense value, trillions of dollars, coastal protection, food, biodiversity. Considering all that, what might the true cost be, the unimaginable cost, if we fail to act with the urgency this crisis clearly demands?